Hey guys, it's me again. I wanted to do a quick video on the top 10 things you should never do in a Mustang. I've seen a lot of videos out recently. I've watched, it feels like almost every video on Mustangs on YouTube, but I know it's impossible because every time you watch one, 10 more pop up. It's a very popular car. And I've seen a lot of these videos about, you shouldn't do this or you should do that in this type of a car. Well, since I've owned this car now for a few months, I am now the definitive expert on Mustangs. If you're sensing some sarcasm in my voice, that's because everybody seems to be an expert and none of them are, including myself. Maybe there are a few experts out there on the car, but I thought I'd film a video on what not to do in this car. So let's fire it up and get started. The first thing you should never do in a Mustang is wear your seatbelt. And that's because if you drive a Mustang, you're way too cool to wear a seatbelt, let's be real. So don't bother with the seatbelt. Now, I'm gonna do it just because of legal purposes. I don't wanna get in trouble or get anybody else in trouble for giving legal advice, so I'm gonna wear a seatbelt for the video, but you should never wear a seatbelt. And that is my professional legal opinion on the subject. The second thing you should never do in a Mustang is place your left hand at 12 o'clock on the steering wheel right here. I'm gonna do it anyway just to show you how not to drive. When you drive with one hand at 12 o'clock, what happens is you lose control of the steering wheel. And Mustangs have so much power that you could easily lose control and crash your car. So don't drive like that. Drive with, 10 and 2 like you're told when you were a kid, or drive at 11 and 1, whatever it is that you were taught, but don't put your hand at 12 o'clock. The third thing you should never, ever, ever do in a Mustang is rest your hand on the gear shift while you're driving. I've heard this a lot in various manual transmission type videos. And the reason for that is that the linkage below the gear shifter is very fragile. And if you put your hand on top of that shifter knob while you're driving and leave it there, the weight of your hand can literally destroy the transmission. Your hand weighs about 2.5 pounds, and that 2.5 pounds on top of, your steel shifting linkage and all the components in there will absolutely destroy your transmission in about 2 to 4 miles. That's all it takes, guys. And oh, by the way, I'm just driving around this neighborhood. I just got the car washed. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, afternoon, sorry, in Austin, Texas, and it's been raining a lot. So I decided I'd go get the car washed, and I pulled off on some side street in a neighborhood that I'm not too familiar with. Beautiful houses, by the way, and I'm kind of lost, so I'm just gonna drive around and get out of this neighborhood. All right, so yeah, don't put your hand on that gear shifter. Ideally, don't even put your hand on the gear shifter while you're shifting. That can cause a lot of damage to the transmission. It's best if you shift it holding it this way with your hand kind of vertically, kind of like you're, holding the shaft of the gear shifter. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of haters, a lot of internet trolls out there writing comments about holding shafts and things like that. Grabbing sticks and whatnot, but I'm just telling you that's the best and safest way to go. Another one that comes up a lot is when you put on the e-brake. Some people say you should or should not use the button. In a Mustang specifically, because it's built of such high quality parts, and it's built of parts that are only available to Ford, you should never use the button, even when releasing the emergency brake. So how do you release it? Just find another way, but don't use that button. You'll destroy Mustang if you do that. I think we're at number 5 now. It might be a little bit more than 10. We'll see what happens with this video. Another thing you should never do in a Mustang is use the horn. Well, first of all, you have a Mustang. Okay, you don't need to honk at anybody. Just go fast and go around them in traffic. But if you have to honk, just rev the engine. That's a lot more effective. It tells people who's really boss, and it makes you feel a whole lot cooler. So a good little like that, that's all you need to do. You don't need to use the horn. the people in front of you and behind you will hear you, and they'll think you're a total asshole, which you probably are, and but at least you'll feel better about yourself, which is really what's important, and that's why you bought this car in the first place. Another thing you should never do in a Mustang is you should never sit at a traffic light like I'm doing with the clutch in gear. That actually does wear down the transmission, not specifically the transmission or generally the transmission, but the throwout bearing. I've heard that in a bunch of videos too. And while I've put hundreds of thousands of miles on various manual transmissions, and I've never really thrown out or burned out a throwout bearing without the clutch, which is just normal wear and tear, I've gotten lots and lots of miles out of pretty much every manual transmission car I've owned or driven. And the actual clutch itself and the throwout bearing, you always replace those at the same time. But let's just throw all that away, because on the Mustang specifically, you'll wear out those transmissions, probably because the transmission is made in China, and you know, nothing good comes from China, especially if you talk to all the people on the forums. Chinese manufacturing isn't crap, right? That's why 90% of the stuff that Americans buy is imported from China. But don't listen to that stuff. Don't listen to facts. Listen to me, because I know what I'm talking about, because I'm an expert, because I've read and I've watched, you know, a lot of videos, like I said. So don't sit at a stoplight with your clutch in, pop it in neutral, and shift back into gear and accelerate when you're ready to go. Another thing that you should never do in a Mustang is roll up the window. Now this time I have the window down. In the other videos I've had it rolled up just because I didn't want a lot of outside road noise on the camera, because I'm too cheap to buy a real camera, so I use my iPhone on one of these crappy little you know, dashboard phone holders for like GPS or whatever. But if you have a real camera, regardless, you should drive with the windows down. You know, unless it's, you know, weather permitting, you should drive with the windows down. You can hear your exhaust. All the girls that hear you driving down the street, when you whistle at them, they'll whistle back, or they'll just jump in the car because the window's open. They do that all the time because you have a Mustang. So again, this stuff is very specific to Mustangs. Camaros, Challengers, BMWs, Mercedes, Audis, any of the other cars that you might be interested in buying, none of these rules apply to them. You should never drive the, I think we're on 8 or 9 now. You should never drive a Mustang slower than 80 miles per hour. And the reason being is that actually hurts the car. The car is a high performance machine, and it's meant to be driven fast. So 80 miles per hour is a good rule of thumb, but ideally what you want to do is you want to keep the RPMs above 4,000, ideally 5,000 to 6,000. Just maintain that RPM range, and your car will last for ages. But if you shift below 5,000 RPM, you will most likely destroy not only your transmission but the engine, because the engine on these are high performance cars, and they're designed to be high revving, which obviously means that the oil pressure is going to go up. It's going to lubricate the engine better when the oil pressure is higher, when the engine's revving faster. Better lubrication means longer life. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out, guys. It takes someone like me watching YouTube videos and owning one of these cars for at least 3 months to become an expert. Another thing that you should never do in a Mustang, I have to think of them now because I'm kind of making all this crap up as I go. Driving with the air conditioner off. So in other words, you should always have the AC running in a Mustang. Crap, I just had my clutch down while I was idling. I might have to go get a new transmission after this video. Shoot. And I've been having I forgot my own rule. I had my hand on top of the gear shifter. I might have to buy 2 transmissions just so I can have a backup one, because I destroyed the first one. Anyway, I hope I didn't do too much damage, so I'll be more careful about that. What were we talking about? Oh, drive with the AC on. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. The reason being is that these cars are high performance machines, and the AC, while it's running, while it does use a little bit more amperage from your alternator, it actually increases your horsepower. Don't ask me how, it's too technical, I don't want to bore you with the details, but just trust me. You'll get at least 30-40 more horsepower when you drive with the AC on. Alright, let's see what else. You should only use premium gas in a Mustang. So this is, I know this is supposed to be things that you shouldn't do, so I guess the shouldn't would be, don't use anything below 104 octane fuel. Preferably use jet fuel, but if you can't find jet fuel or racing fuel, minimally use 91 octane. Even though the owner's manual and every mechanic I've talked to says that you can put regular 87 octane in a 5.0 motor, don't do that. They don't know what they're talking about. Use high octane fuel. It's a high octane performance machine. And octane equals horsepower, don't forget it. In case anybody ever asks you what octane means, octane equals horsepower. I think octane is Latin for horsepower. It comes from the Greek word octos, which means horse, and taenius, which means power. So you're welcome. I think that's about 10 things. I have to, what else is there? I personally don't like to drive with the radio on because I'd like to listen to that glorious exhaust note as I'm driving around with the windows down, making everybody jealous. Yeah, you don't have a stop sign, you can go. But if you have to drive with the radio on, you should only listen to AM talk radio. And that's because Mustang owners are clearly more educated and more well-informed people, and you don't need to listen to radio. All you need to listen to is AM talk radio, preferably some very conservative talk radio. And that's really all there is to owning a Mustang, guys. I hope you found this video useful. Please subscribe to my channel. This one was kind of off the cuff, but we'll have plenty more videos like this. I'm pulling back in at home. So I guess I'm done with my rant. See you later.